A few months ago, I became famous for stripping down half nude as a fat 40-year-old mom at a farmer's market downtown Boise. A video of the event quickly went viral, showing me in a black bikini, blindfolded, with a handful of washable markers from my daughter's art kit and a chalkboard sign at my feet that read, "If you've ever struggled with a self-esteem issue like me and believe all bodies are valuable, draw a heart on my body." It was a feminist art performance piece, just one in a series I've done over the past 7 years as a body-positive activist calling for radical self-acceptance. I wrote a blog post about it after that hour in the market titled "A Stand for Self-Love," and henceforth, media and celebrities and writers around the world glommed onto those words like I did, referring to my act that day as the stand for self-love, or as I affectionately refer to it now, the shortened version, the stand. This, of course, wasn't the first time I stood up for myself or for something. I've stood up a lot of times in my life. The theologian Mary Daly says courage requires couraging, much like learning to ski requires, skiing a lot, and piano playing requires practice. And just as many times, like I'm sure you can all relate to, I've gotten shoved back into my seat, knocked down flat on the floor, crawled, and slowly pulled myself to standing again, each time a bit taller, wiser, louder, braver. We all have a story that can lead to a stand, and I'm going to share bits of mine, how I've stood up several times over the course of my life, paving the way to the stand for me. Like that time as a young teenager when I wrote a letter to the editor of my local newspaper because there was an outcry to abolish the only chapter on sex education from our health class curriculum, and I got called a slut. I curled up in my bedroom and cried, but crawled back to school, wiser. And in my 20s, when a boyfriend turned to me one day and screamed in my face, "I am so tired of hearing about your feminist garbage. Will you just shut up?" And I broke up with him that same day, louder. And in my 30s, when I landed the dream job of my career, only to fight for fair treatment and equal pay and appropriate family leave and time to breastfeed my baby, and I'm deemed difficult to work with, self-righteous. I lost that job, and it knocked me flat on my back, but I slowly pulled myself to standing again, braver. I forged my own new career path as a writer and continued questioning archaic ideals of the past and began making my own rules. 7 years ago, I literally Googled the words, "Why am I fat and happy?" Because I personally knew no one else who was not buying into our consumerist culture's crap and thought, one, am I crazy? Or two, if not, there's got to be someone else out there that feels this way too, right? And after scrolling through pages and pages of ads for the diet industry complex and news articles telling me I was unhappy because I was fat, I finally found what I was looking for. 2 blogs that forever changed my life and catapulted me into ideas about health at every size and body positivity and fat acceptance. I read every book and news article and scientific study. I followed fat, fierce feminists on Facebook and Twitter. For 3 years, I immersed myself in the education, and it started showing up more and more in my art, in my writing, on my Facebook wall, and coming out of my mouth. 4 years ago, I did my first public performance piece on how to be fat, fit, and fabulous here in Boise, and earned my place as a radical feminist with ideas about all bodies being good bodies and that there is, in fact, no wrong way to have a body. It went pretty well, but my second performance did not. At an event To an audience similar to this, I proposed a public art social activism project for International No Diet Day, and for the first time in my life, earned myself a vile internet troll. A man who was anonymously writing hateful things about me and my body on Twitter while I was on stage. The social media bigotry continued onto my Facebook wall, this time by both men and women I actually knew in real life, and coupled with the fact that unbeknownst to all of them, I was also suffering from my first miscarriage at home, alone, I shut down. Both physically and literally, I shut down, closing all my social media accounts for the summer, taking a much-needed break to heal my mind, my heart, and my body at home. I had felt so strong, so brave in my body positivity, and it had all failed me. Both the body I had worked so hard to love and the activism I had felt so strongly about. I rose up, though, taller, and rejoined social media and started the Boise Rad Fat Collective, a private Facebook group that began with a few like-minded friends and acquaintances who wanted a safe space to share body-positive links and news articles in both a kind and scholarly way. It was in this group where I first posted the video of Jay West and the Liberators International, a group of Australians who stage public social experiments geared around participatory acts of kindness. The video featured Jay in her bra and undies in Piccadilly Circus in London with a sign, blindfold, and markers. It was heartwarming, and I thought about it hard with all my body-positive feminist theory and socially acceptable standards of beauty and questioned, how might this experiment be perceived differently if the woman was, say, twice Jay's size, like around 226 pounds, and twice her age, like, say, 40 and a mom, and in a much more conservative place like Boise, Idaho? Well, I decided to find out and asked photographer Melanie Falwell to document the stand and picked a date about 2 weeks out at the busiest pedestrian spot in the city, the Capital City Public Market, at noon. To say I was terrified would be an understatement. I woke up that morning and puked. I kept the whole thing hush-hush, as I didn't want to stalk the crowd with friends and known body-positive people, but wanted to let it organically evolve, even if that meant people yelled mean things at me. The police asked me to leave, or worse, no one shared in my message of self-love. Psyching myself up, right before stepping into the crowd and taking off my dress, I suddenly felt the need to set parameters for success. My goal that day was, if 5 people stop and draw a heart on me, if I can get 5 people to dig deep and think hard about their bodies and loving them and hating them, then it's a success. Just 5. Well, as you may know by now, I touched a lot more than 5 people that day. In fact, our video has been viewed over 130 million times. And the messages in my inbox were in the thousands and from all corners of the world saying thank you for standing for me and with courage. I wasn't wearing much that day, but what I was wearing is important to note. I decided on a bikini instead of a bra and panties, as I thought that might be more palatable to a conservative city like Boise. By stripping off my clothes, I was stripping away negative body image and saying, I'm at peace with my body, and I have been for many years, and I think you should be too. Plus, logistically, it gave the participants more skin to ride on. I wore the blindfold for many reasons. To make myself more anonymous, so the viewer could look at me and see in my body, their body, and everybody. It made me vulnerable, obviously, and it represented years of mistreatment of the fat body in media, as people who are often depicted with a black bar across their faces or their heads entirely cut off in news articles and magazine stories as if they are nothing more than a body to be reviled. In addition to what I was wearing or not wearing, you can see other things in the photos and the video from that day, like sweat pouring down my rolls of back fat, cellulite, stretch marks, sagging breasts that have nursed 3 babies in a wonky halter top. But I know you can see more than that too. You can see the humanity, the kindness, the acceptance. Immediately upon stepping into that crowd, people began swarming around me, and feeling that first marker slip from my hands was such a relief, such a rush of emotion so intense that I began crying. But to my surprise, so did that first woman, who not only drew a heart on my body, but I could also feel wrote a word, and she spoke to me. She said, "This is so brave. You are so powerful. Thank you." And this continued over and over by men and women, this whispering of stories of pain and joy, love and suffering. And they told me what the crowd around me was doing. "You can't see any of this," they said, "but you are touching people in ways unimaginable. Even if they are stopping to glare at you, they are reading your sign and taking to heart their own self-loathing." One father knelt down near me with his 2 young sons, read them my sign, and said, "This is what a beautiful woman looks like." And I know he was talking about more than my physical appearance alone. This overwhelming sense that I was, in fact, a voice of a revolution they'd all been waiting for continued for the next hour I stood in that market. I only finally decided to take off my blindfold when people began telling me there was no more available skin to write on and my markers had run out of ink. Everyone there that day knew something extraordinary was happening, and once I saw Melanie's photographs, I knew that was a fact. People of all ages, sizes, genders, nationalities, abilities, religions had participated in my project that day, and I couldn't wait to share the news with the rest of Boise because I thought they'd be pretty excited too. 2 days later, I wrote a heartfelt blog post accompanied by some of Melanie's amazing photographs, and she and I got together one night and sat up until about 2 a.m. with some wine and the iMovie app and made a video. The photos and video feature unretouched images, keeping true to the spirit of the project and my body in all its imperfections. We dropped it all out into the internet universe on a Thursday, and immediately my message spread like wildfire. All our Facebook friends were sharing my blog post, accompanied with more personal status updates about their own struggles with self-esteem and body image. Within 24 hours, the local media had picked up the story, and within 48 hours, I got my first phone call from USA Today. And from there, it was a whirlwind of international press. From NPR radio to appearing live on CNN, from People magazine to Cosmopolitan, from being featured on both the homepages of Yahoo and MSN, to Kevin Bacon and Alanis Morissette both tweeting to me and about me on Twitter. I set up a Google alert on myself, and it couldn't even keep up with the stories that were being written about my stand for self-love all over the world in languages I didn't even recognize. Spiraling so quickly into international fame for something so beautiful and raw was staggering in the best possible way. I've been overwhelmed with the tears and support that have been shared with me, and I don't think I've stopped crying for months now. But that's the thing about vulnerability, right? When you open up and you start to live with your full heart, there's no going back. My stand for self-love hasn't come without its difficult and dark moments, however. The internet is a place where people feel free to spew unkind untruths. I've been accused of being lazy, ugly, stupid, uneducated, a bad mother, and a Californian. Apparently an insult some people like to throw around. I have thick skin, and I know that ignorant and mean comments almost always have more to do with the writer's personal problems than the person they are directed at. There have been times, though, when I've wanted to shove my heart back safely under wraps where it used to belong because it's scary out here, this wholehearted living, as Brene Brown calls it. But while I may trip up a bit, I don't fall much anymore, and I leave my heart right out here. It's age-old wisdom, summoning the bravery to stand back up after falling down. From that old cowboy saying, always get back on the horse that threw you, to the contemporary work of Brene Brown. I took a stand in August for self-love, and I can't think of anything more important to stand up for than myself. Boise proved that day it was ready for a body-positive revolution, and hundreds of thousands around the world followed suit. We've been waiting for you, I heard, but we need some help standing up. Well, I'm honored to stand by your side. Take my hand if you need, and I'll pull you up. In a society that profits from your self-doubt, liking yourself is a rebellious act. The artist and wordsmith Caroline Caldwell says, and I couldn't agree more. We can't truly love one another until we love ourselves. The personal revolution is the first step. When a handful of us, or a few hundred of us, or a few million of us love ourselves, that's when the real revolution begins. We are often our own biggest bully. Our biggest obstacle is ourself. Life is much too short to go on hating yourself or your body 1 minute longer. But you have to do the hard work. You have to dig deep and learn and flail and educate yourself and fall down and get back up. It's not easy, but it's so worth it. My story shows that people are good and kind and ready and willing to engage in new ideas. What is your story? What do you stand for? Write that letter. Leave that toxic job. Quit that unhealthy relationship. Strip off that self-doubt. Be rebellious and take a risk. Stand up. Thank you.